Okay. Welcome also from our side, from Maria and me. As Marta already said, we are going to present the results of the first iteration of the Near2Me Off-the-Beaten Track field trials. As you know, the Off-the-Beaten Track prototype or application is a travel recommender system, which has the purpose to integrate and merge technologies and algorithms which were implemented within the Petamedia project, and the main part to kind of evaluate the triple synergy from a user perspective, from the user point of view. So the purpose is to integrate all the technologies which were used within the design phase, which was done by Luz, as you remember, into the prototype, and then the implementation of the prototype is kind of the basis for the user-centric evaluation. And we're going to talk about the implementation, the integration of those algorithms within Near2Me Off-the-Beaten Track. I will talk a little bit about these issues, and then Maria will take over and will talk about the user-centric evaluation. And in the end, we kind of conclude and we say what we're going to do in the upcoming iterations until the end of the field trials. Okay. Before we actually start with the explanation of the prototype and how we integrate it, and before we talk about the data set, I want to show the video prototype, or a part of the video prototype, which was done by Luz, and you already, or most of you already saw in Berlin, just that you remember the concept behind the application and the ideas and which algorithms were used, and then we move on. The video prototype, or that part of the video prototype will take like 3.5 minutes, so and I hope you get a good idea what we will do.
Let's see how this is done. The Near2Me interface shows John 5 panels. In the first panel, there are pictures of the places Near2Me recommends for you. In the next one, a map showing the places' locations. The third panel shows a list containing the names of these places, which are produced automatically by Near2Me based on the pictures' geotags. Next, a tag cloud describes the things that he can find in these places. The tags are clustered into topics, with only one representative tag showing for each topic to ensure that John can have a broad view without clutter. And last, a list of travelers who share John's interests and have photographed these places. John sees a picture he finds interesting. When he hovers the cursor over it, all the information related to this place highlights in each panel. Clicking on the picture, John dives into this location. The panels select their content, and John is now exploring the Trocadero area. The tag cloud shows what Near2Me recommends for John in Trocadero. John clicks on Market. He's now in Paris Trocadero area, Market. The tags now show, among other things, Marcia Wilson. This is what he's seeing. The pictures depict the place. Near2Me makes sure that the pictures are diverse enough for him to have a good idea of what can be found or done in this place. John likes the place and saves it to his travel plans, naming it Marcia Wilson. John wonders if there are any other interesting markets in Paris. He removes the Trocadero area label, and now he can see all the Paris markets. Some travelers appear starred. This means that they are expert market chroniclers and photographers. By clicking on this user's avatar, John can experience markets in Paris from her perspective. He sees several markets he's interested in, and he adds the group to his travel plans. He continues exploring. In one picture, he sees something unknown to him. The information from the tags is not helpful to know what it is. He launches the image-based search. He picks the brush, he draws a contour around the unknown object, and he clicks the search button. Image-based search will look for related tags that can help John figure out what the object is. He continues to explore Paris and save stuff to his travel plans. John?
Okay, so that's the idea behind the concept and how to integrate several algorithms which were developed within the project. The particular algorithms are, we have 6 algorithms. The first one, geotag-based location recommendation, which you saw where a user gets some location recommended. Then we have to name those recommendations with place naming. Then we also get some representative and diverse images for each of the locations. And then we have those people who were shown like start in the bottom of the interface. This is the authorities, so experts for a specific topic or for a specific location. And to generate those topics, we have the tag clustering and cluster naming algorithm. And for this image-based search, for this query by example, for the tag propagation, we have the tag propagation using object duplicate detection algorithm. As we already said in Berlin, the first 5 algorithms were used within the first iteration of the prototype, and the last algorithm was kind of postponed to the upcoming iterations, and that's how also how we actually did it in the first iteration. Okay, these are just the applications from those contributions. Okay, now to the actual implementation of the prototype and to the data set. So we used a data set which was produced by the location recommendation algorithm, where we had some cities, and within each city we had like 500 points of interest, more or less, that was already pre-extracted, and those points were kind of rated from on the beaten track to off the beaten track, more or less. So there was everything in there, like, yeah. And for each of those 500 points, we crawled pictures, a maximum of 100 pictures within a radius of 1 kilometer around that specific geotag of one location. And additionally to the pictures, we also crawled basic metadata like, I don't know, title, description, file name, and so on. All the tags, all the comments and user information of people who commented which picture, and what was already there in this pre-extracted data set, the number of visitors of each location, which is used for the location recommendation algorithm. The next step was then, so okay, this is the basic data set then for all the algorithms which were used within the project, what we mentioned before, and we then distributed this data set, this basic data set, to all the sites, to all the researchers which were involved. They ran their algorithms on that data set, and we agreed kind of a format how we put the output of those algorithms back into our basic data set to enrich our data with their results. Like there was cases where we had to do some database transfer stuff, or with XML files or text files. And yeah, as I said, point 4, the resulting data of each algorithm was then included into the data set, into the final data set. And that was also the basis for the Near2Me off the beaten track web application. Okay. Some restrictions we had, what we also already defined, or we defined at the meeting in Berlin. For now, we have recommendations for people who have been to London and go to Paris. That's for complexity reasons. We restricted that to this combination. The second restriction, or it's kind of a restriction, is that the algorithms were executed offline or in a hybrid point of view. So like for the location recommendation, of course, we built a similarity model between locations between cities offline. So the similarity matrix, or the similarities are stored in the data set, but the actual location recommendation algorithm is executed within the prototype. The same is true for the tag clustering, for example, for the topic extraction. We have the similarities between tags offline, the calculation of these metrics, and the clustering algorithm itself is executed within the prototype. And one issue what we recognized in the user or during the user-centric evaluation, as I said before, for each geotag we crawled images within a 1 kilometer radius. So if we have now locations which were close to each other, we have kind of an overlapping area as we see in that picture here, and we have then pictures which were belonging to this cluster and to this cluster which were exactly the same. So that was, Maria will tell that later at the results for the user evaluation. This was one issue we had there. Okay, to the algorithms, just a short explanation. So for the geotag-based location recommendation, what I already said, we have the 500 points within each city. In this case, as I also already said, we have the combination London-Paris. So we calculated the similarity between London and Paris, so 500 times 500 points, more or less. And the similarity was done or was calculated based on the number of visitors we had in the dataset, what I explained earlier. So we said just the similarity between 2 points, two locations, is calculated like people who have been in London to a specific point, and people and the same person or persons have also been to Paris at a specific point. Those 2 points are kind of similar, and we store that in the data set. And the ranking is then for a new user who is coming is then based on the similarity model, of course, and the places that person has been in London in that case, or in the start city. The next algorithm, the selection of representative and diverse images for a specific location, that was done based on visual content of images and additional or textual information which was corresponding or which is corresponding to that to those images, whereas title, description, and tags were taken into account, and also user information and like interactions between users, like who commented on what picture, for example. And the solution how that was kind of implemented was a graph-based approach, and the results are kind of now before publication, if we can say it like that. For place naming, we need for the recommended locations, we need a naming for each place, and we used a combination of geonames.org web services, as the name already suggests. So these are web services which for a specific geotag or location gives you a name, and we used different web services to generate the names for each geotag, for each recommended location. For the authorities, for the experts, we clustered people based on location, and then used the information, the social network information for people who commented on which people commented on which picture or pictures to generate the authority scores and then rank the people for each location. And the last algorithm we used was the tag clustering to extract the topic and topic names, and we did it like that for pictures we show in the interface, all of those pictures have tags, and we took all the tags of the displayed images and ran the tag clustering algorithm, and for each generated cluster we took the name, and that's then the extracted topic. Okay, for the implementation itself, we created a web application with the Google Web Toolkit and MySQL database and the model view presenter pattern. That's a pattern which is used within the Google Web Toolkit. And as you saw in the video prototype, for each of the 5 panels, we implemented or we integrated the 5 algorithms. And yeah, what was done is that we have for this overview user interface where we have for each location a picture and the topics extracted, so we can filter by topics on that level, and we have of course the recommended locations and their names. And then, as Lou said in the video prototype, we can zoom into a location and we can then we extract the authorities, so we can filter and show images by topics and authorities in that case. So before Maria will now Maria will say something about the user evaluation, I just want to show a short demo of the prototype. So the resolution is unfortunately not that good, but what we see here is kind of similar to what we have in the video prototype. So in that panel we have I already logged in as a user now, and we got some recommendations. So in that case we have the recommended locations here. The names of those locations are displayed here. In that panel we show for each of the location one picture, and here we have the topics extracted from the tags of those images. And if we zoom into one location, for example B is Louvre. So if we go into that cluster, we get some representative and diverse images for this location, for this cluster, and people who are experts in that location. So again, the experts are for now calculated within the cluster, and the cluster is one location. That's a little bit different compared to the idea of loose, but we will talk about that later, and that will be changed in the upcoming iterations. But we now have the experts per location, and of course the extracted topics and tags. So if we, for example, now go to the tag or to the topic museum, we get some other pictures which are tagged by museum. And and we can, for example, then, so we are now, what you see above, we are at location B, Louvre, and by the tag museum. And we can, for example, also get some pictures of an authority, and show that's the pictures of those authorities are in that case, as we said, calculated based on comments, so people who comment on pictures, and the artistic value, for example, or what we saw here, the artistic value is of the pictures are kind of higher compared to the default pictures. Yeah. Okay. I have another recommendation open for another user for more not because here we had some. Go back to home. We got a lot of locations recommended, which are really touristic, but that user also went to very touristic places in London. The other user here, for example, has other recommendations, and you see that this is kind of more off the beaten track. Okay, so now Maria will say something about the user evaluation.
Okay. So I will present the results of the user evaluation. We were two user experience researchers working for 2 months in this project. And first, the evaluation goals that came from the design report that we already had. And the main goals were measuring the user satisfaction, that in general it was measuring how appealing the recommendations are for the users, and then the interaction with the system, that this is more related with the user experience. So how enjoyable the prototype is, how do they interact, is it easy for them, do they extract with looking the places and finding the recommendations. So these are the 5 technologies that Christoph has already said, and we tested the 5 of them. And we did it in 2 phases. During the first one, we collected some demographics and background information about the people, and then we performed the actual test. For the test, we got 12 participants, which lays in the normal number for qualitative analysis. Say 6 of them were females, and then the age is from 23 to 31. And we had some conditions for these people to get into our user test. First, they had to be like this out of the mainstream tourists. They had to be familiar with applications, and they had to be to have never been in London, because as Christoph has said, the place where we are getting the recommendations is from London. So this is the questionnaire where we got some just background information as name, age, and gender. But also here we asked them about places in London where they had been and they had particularly enjoyed. So this was in order to kind of fake that we had we couldn't ask them to give us the pictures in bigger as it would have been in the regular system. So we asked them to test what they like in London, and then we created users in our database. So this was done in advance. And then this was the actual test that was done in Delft and in Eindhoven. During the test, it was the 2 of us, the 2 user experience researchers. Then the test was split in 3 parts. During the first part, users were brief what the experiment was about, and we also showed them a part of the prototype, of the video prototype, where the components that are implemented were explained. Then they could interact with the prototype, and we gave them a task that it was plan a weekend in Paris. And during they were interacting with the prototype, they had to think aloud. That I don't know if you're familiar with this term, so it's something that is used in researching with users. So they had to speak about what they would expect from the prototype, what they didn't find, and if they were frustrated, whatever they thought. And what the user was doing was recorded with a screen record, and also there was a video camera in order to see the gestures and what they were doing with the prototype. Then when we had all the data from the 12 users, we made the transcript of all and then after we had a semi-structured interview with the users. Then we coded these interviews and we analyzed them doing affinity diagrams. So we clustered all the information we got according to the different components. And these are the results. The first one is that people not always take pictures of the places they like, and not always upload these pictures to the internet. So this was one of our assumptions, but it seems it's not true, because when they are on the beach, or when they are in really crowded places, or when someone else is taking the camera with them, they don't take pictures. And also, sometimes someone else is uploading the picture for them, so they don't have those pictures in their account. Also, they mentioned that sometimes when they really enjoy something, they don't want to take a picture because it kind of breaks the magic of the moment. So the first assumption was not true in all the cases. Then in general, users were still really enthusiastic about the concept, and they really enjoyed this really strong visual approach of Near2Me. So they like all the pictures. They really went in this discovering by exploring. So they really went through all the prototype, trying to find some serendipity. So they really wanted to like have happy findings in these pictures. Then they really like this humanization. And here we have one of the quotes of these users. So this tells me what somebody put that he didn't recommend it to me, but he posted, so he built some personal relations. So this is something that it was an added value for most of the users over other kind of recommended travel guides. Then all the users found their way through the interface, so this was also important from a user perspective because they had different kinds of style, like interaction styles. So some of them started with the tags, some of them started with the names or with the pictures, but all of them could perfectly understand what they wanted to do since the beginning. And as I already said, they really like this discovering experience of the prototype. But even though they really like this strongly visual approach, they had a lack of contextual information. So they could see a really nice picture, but afterwards they really didn't know what to do with it because the goal was to go there, and they didn't have enough information to plan the trip. Then related to this, also they lacked a tool for actual planning. That this was planned for the design concept, so it was already in the report. And as Christoph has mentioned, these overlapping places influenced really negatively the perception of the users over the prototype. So these are two screenshots of actual like users test. In the first one, you cannot see, but this is from the Eiffel Tower, and this one is from Trocadero. So there are some overlapping pictures. And at the beginning, when users saw that in Trocadero there was the Eiffel Tower, they thought that it was because it was in the area. But then afterwards, most of them started to get frustrated, and some of them moved to like Google to find like information that they could trust. So there was an issue. So what we suggest in order to solve these issues is first it's important to solve the picture overlapping in order to increase the user experience in overall and the trustfulness and the feeling that they had with the prototype. Then adding some contextual information, so something that is not like a huge test, but something that can provide some information about the place. And allowing the users to plan by saving and explore new ways of input. This is related to what I say, that users not always take pictures of what they like or upload the pictures to the internet. So they should be able maybe to tag themselves in other pictures or like some pictures that they will take in account for the algorithm, like you can do in other social networks. These are some of the design recommendations we gave for the general things. And now I will go through all the components. So the results we got for the recommendation algorithm. So the first thing is that it seems that it's a bit biased by the mainstream recommendations. So what does it mean? That if a user gave us many alternative locations from London, then he or she got nice recommendations, like out of the mainstream recommendations for Paris. But as long as he or she had one or two recommendations in the mainstream in London, such as the London Eye or the Tate Museum, then he will get many mainstream recommendations in Paris. So he will get like 10 of them will be within the Eiffel Tower, the Sacré-Cœur, Trocadero, and so forth. Then, like they had some difficulties in assessing how relevant the recommendations were related to their interest. So these are some of the quotes. So as you can see in the first one, I like the things that they are representative of city as for a history, so they like to see this visual approach. I want to know why they are representative, to make sense of what I'm saying. So they really wanted some more information to see what they were saying, seeing. And then, but the users that could recognize the connection between the interest and the recommendations were really satisfied with the prototype. So there was one user that told us that she liked the cemetery, Municipal Cemetery in London, and she got a recommendation of cemetery in Paris, and her satisfaction of the recommendation was much higher than with other ones. Then they really rely on how the picture was looking. So some of them were really artistic, so they liked this recommendation, but sometimes the recommendation was not exactly what they wanted. So this leaves some frustration. But yeah, the recommendation is because the recommendation was just appealing because of the graphical point. So here we come again to this lack of contextual information. Then they were interested in places that they had never been before. But many of them pointed out that sometimes this alternative tourism is not only about what you see, but also how you see. So they say, for example, if it's fine that the system is recommending me the Eiffel Tower, but maybe I would like to know, okay, go there at 8 in summer because there is the sunset, and there is a really nice view, and there is someone selling crepes next to you. So these kind of recommendations were also alternative recommendations for the users. Then the design recommendations for this component is first that again the contextual information will influence also this component that is the recommendation algorithm. Then some semantic and learnability in the system should be included, and also it will be interesting adding the level of familiarity of the person with the city, because right now you get the same, like if you have the same input from London, then you get the same output from Paris. But maybe if you have been already 3 times in Paris, then you don't want the same recommendations than the other ones, so maybe these ones will be taken in account. Then now we go for the second component, that is this place naming, that if you remember the prototype and the recommendations that are here on the right, then most of them found them very useful, so they could perfectly understand all the names that were in the locations. But they had the travels, when they had travels, it was first with the language, because for example, Chinese users had problems with the names were in French. And then also the nature of the location, because it was a bit inconsistent. Sometimes it was the recommendation was Trocadero, and sometimes the recommendation was the Eiffel Tower. So there were inconsistencies in the nature of the recommendation. So what do we recommend? Is first is this try to be consistent in terms of if everything is an area or everything is a complete location. So what we suggest is that the first level, this is based also on what the users say. So in the first level, there can be areas, so like Trocadero or Montmartre, and then when they dig into the second level, then they go to concrete locations. And this should be also consistent with the map. So right now, what we have are like concrete locations, and you can see like in Google, like the points. But if in the first level you have areas, then there should be like a surface highlighted, and when you go to the second one, then you can have concrete locations. Now the third component, that is the diversity of the images. So sometimes the diversity was not consistent among different locations. So what does this mean? So on the left, we have the images from the Eiffel Tower, and here we have 4 the Sacred Court. So here, 4 out of the 6 pictures are the Eiffel Tower itself. And here, the Sacred Court appears 2 times, but actually one is in the background, so you cannot really see it, and the other one is kind of artistic picture, so you cannot really see that is the sacred core either. So this one is really diverse, and this one is really just the Eiffel Tower in 4 times. But sometimes this diversity was perceived as randomized. This is related to this 4-1 also, because they would like also to see some realistic pictures. Then also many users found that the correspondence with the location and the picture sometimes was not really clear. So as I said in the sacred core, they didn't have a picture of the sacred core itself. So they couldn't really see what it was going on there in the first place. And although they really like this visual approach and alternative, they also want to see realistic pictures. So here is one of the recommendations that the user got in the first place. So here we are in the first level, and as you can see, there are many of these artistic pictures from this user, that they are really nice, but they didn't give much information about the place. So what we recommend for this is at least provide one significant picture for each location. That, for example, can be the first picture that appears here in the main page. So here, if you see the 0.0, then the first picture you have there is that one, and when you go deep inside that, you can have a more diverse set of pictures. Then to find a compromise between this realistic and more artistic or eye-catching, because they were really useful. People really liked and really felt like inspired by them. They also, with this really artistic, they thought how I could take this kind of picture, so they really like it, but they also need the other ones to be able to see what they want to see, to go. And then, once again, this component will be also positively influenced by adding contextual information. Then now the fourth component that is related to the authorities, that are the people that were here down in the prototype, if you remember. So in general, they were really positive. They really liked, they explored, they tried to discover the pictures that the authorities had. So they really enjoyed this part of the prototype. They were interesting, useful, and inspiring. They thought, as Christoph has said, that this part had like a higher aesthetic value. So here we can see some of the pictures for one of the authorities, that is Eole, and they found really inspiring, and people say even kind of poetic, this kind of pictures. But they had some problems in choosing one expert over another, because they didn't have much information about the author of the picture, just the pictures he or she had done. So they would have liked to have more information about the profile, sometimes also to try to match their profile with the author's profile to see which kind of places he will enjoy just by seeing what the other person enjoys. So what we suggest is first provide this a profile for this author, then indicate which are the local experts. This was also interesting because many of the users would like to know who are the local people in Paris, because they think that the perception that these people have of a tourist, even though they are really expert tourists, is completely different. So it will be interesting for them, and also many people mention that they would like to have a kind of social networking with these people. So we think that it will be really interesting to research on the possibility of enhancing the prototype by adding a kind of community. And the last component, that is the are the ones with tags that were here, the topics that Christoph said. So most of the users, they really like these tags. The user experience that it provided, it was really good because they could discover the place. But when they started using the tags, they were a bit kind of disappointed because some of them, they were not really meaningful. Like they had one tag that was Nikon, so the name of the camera I was taken for, that didn't give them much information about the place. And but they didn't want like really explicit names, because there was one that was book crossing that most of the users didn't know what it meant, but almost all of them clicked on book crossing and wanted to know more about it. So they really like this kind of, again, serendipity, trying to find new things that they like in the prototype. And they had problems in finding the connection with the tags, the location, and the tags and the picture. So what does it mean? These are the tags, the topics I'm speaking about. So here we are in the loop. So here, and then the topics that they have is safe, Lee, note, French. So they were not, sometimes they were not really related. And also these are the pictures displayed with safe. So they couldn't find the relationship between safe and these images. So what we suggest is providing a bit more meaningful tags, but if possible, but they are not completely trivial. So this book crossing thing that they like so much. And well, the relationship between the three components should be clear in order to enhance the user experience in overall of the tags. So now, let's go on.
Yeah. Before I continue with all that, after all the design recommendations and the evaluation, I think we can say and that we see that the data set and the algorithms are really two parts. So the algorithms are highly influenced by the data set, like for the representative and diverse images, that without defending any algorithm or something like that, that was really highly dependent on the data set. Okay. So for the algorithms and features which should be integrated in the upcoming iterations, what we said before with the tag propagation using object duplicate detection, that algorithm should be included in the newer versions of the prototype. And what we also want to do is what we saw in the video prototype, to have these topical clusters. What we have right now, what we said is that the authorities, those experts, are calculated based on clusters of locations. But we also want to have the clusters in terms of topics, and then see, like what we have in the next point here, explore a topic of a particular location over location. So we have, for example, what Luz did in her video prototype, that she went from into one location, and then she selected one topic, and then she removed this location label in the top. Then she had this topic, the selected topic of that location, overall recommended locations. That's not possible right now, because we have just the clusters of locations and not of topics. And yeah, we also want to kind of enhance some other UI functionality, like what we saw in the beginning of the video prototype, is that, for example, if she hovers over one picture, that all the related information which is related to that picture is shown in the user interface, like the tags or topics, with the place where it is, and the people who are kind of experts for topics of that picture. And this save favorite locations, what was also mentioned in the user evaluation, it is just a user interface minor issue. It's just that we saved this location in the database, but it will not be, and it was not planned by Luz, that we get kind of a shortest way to all of the saved locations or something like that. So the outcome of the user evaluation, the main insights, which are very important and which kind of guides us through the upcoming iterations, is that it's very positive that users perceive the Near2Me application as a social application, which is definitely one of the goals, to integrate all this data and to have this triple synergy and in that kind of application. What users also want, what we saw, is that they want to see through the